Okay, welcome everyone to building the Junior Mac Genius Bar. My name is Damien Barrett, and it is true that tiny hats are awesome. So the joke behind this is one day I was out in the classroom, one of my classrooms at the upper school, and I found this tiny little hat. Like, what on earth is this thing doing here? And so I put it on and took a selfie. And it became my profile pic for PSU MacAdmins. So I felt that, at least for a minute or two, I had to wear a tiny hat. And then the subtitle there, Tiny Hats Are Awesome, was placeholder text that I forgot to change, and I left it in. So this is my homage to tiny hats. I actually believe these were meant for cats and dogs. You can buy them at the dollar store. So it's also kind of an homage to what we do as technicians. I wear a lot of hats at my job. I wear a system technician hat. I wear a help desk technician hat. I am just-in-time support in the classrooms. I'm the help desk manager. I'm the Jamf guy. I'm the printer guy. And it goes on and on and on and on. So I think all of you guys are in K-12 for the most part. Actually, show of hands, who's in K-12? Who's in higher ed? And who's not either? Okay. And show of hands, how many of you run a help desk or have a help desk? Or am the help desk? Who is the help desk? All right, so you guys can come up here and join me as experts. What I started thinking about a couple of years ago was how I could make our help desk better. How could I utilize some of the frameworks we already have in place? Is there feedback on this? Yeah. Are you guys working on that?
Oh, you mean, it's echo.
Yeah. It's echo? Yeah. All right. Okay. I started thinking about the frameworks we have in place for our help desk and how I can make it better. And for you guys to understand the full scope of this presentation, I have to give you a little bit of history about my school and some of the things we've been doing for the past 10 years. In 2006, we started envisioning what a one-to-one program might look like at our school. And we started by giving all of our teachers a white MacBook. You guys remember those? And we did that for a couple of years with pretty good success. The teachers loved them. We did lots of end-user training. We did lots of training around the types of software and the ways in which technology could be utilized in the classroom. And we started to think, what could we do? This is our plan to move into a one-to-one student laptop program. This is our pilot program. And for a couple of years, we went really well. And then as we started to push the buttons to make the one-to-one student laptop program start, I was hired in 2008 to support that imminent program. In 2009, we put the brakes on. And this is very important for infrastructure upgrades. If you haven't deployed a one-to-one program and your infrastructure is not up to snuff, stop. You must have good wireless and network infrastructure or you will have problems. So we put the brakes on for a year. And then in 2010, we rolled out 1,000+ MacBook Pros across grades 4 through 12, plus all faculty and staff. And we designed it in kind of an unusual way. We wanted to mimic what the real world looked like. So if you guys go to the Apple store and you buy a computer, the first account you create is what? A standard or admin? Admin. So in most one-to-one programs, the users are not admins because people are afraid about what the students might do. Oh, they might install malware, or they might mess the computer up. Well, that in no way represents or reflects what the real world is like. And so we said, well, what if we allowed all of our students to be admins? Will it work? We weren't quite sure, but we tried it, and we've had very good success doing this. Now, it's not completely open book and laissez-faire. We do have some frameworks that the students have to work within, but everybody's an admin. And so our users are already empowered to keep their systems up to date. They're already empowered to take care of their equipment, to keep it clean, to reboot it regularly. Do we have 100% buy-in? No. We'll never have 100% buy-in, but it's been fairly successful, and we've continued on this path using our driver's test and our driver's manual, which you can find on our website, where we have all of our users study the manual and then take a test. After they've taken the test, they become admins. So we've had a very successful laptop program, and one of the successes, one of the things we've been doing for many years, is working with our laptop leaders. This is about 15 to 20 students across our middle school and upper school who have volunteered to be part of this leadership group. And they do all kinds of things for me. They provide just-in-time support in the classroom. Let's say a projector's acting up. They step up and they help out. Let's say a teacher having trouble printing. The teachers know to go to the students who are laptop leaders and say, hey, can you help me print with this? Our laptop leaders provide just-in-time support in the classroom. They provide my beta testing pool. So if I'm testing a new operating system, they get it first. If I'm testing new hardware, all of our hardware is on a 3-year rotation. So every 3 years we replace all of our hardware. And so we have parity and equity across the board. Everyone, including myself, has the same machine. So when a new piece of hardware has to be tested, they're my testing pool. In the fall, we're going to start testing for our next cycle. And they will be the first group to get Mojave on whatever the new device is. So we've had some great success with this. I've presented on it here at PSU. I presented on it at JNUC. There's videos online if you want to go find them on cultivating a culture of respect and empathy and ethics and responsibility in a laptop program. But I thought, how can I make it better? Oscar de la Hoya says, there's always space for improvement, no matter how long you've been in the business. And so I thought to myself, what's happening around me that might be able to kind of make this happen? What things are happening around me that I could then utilize and leverage to my advantage to make a better help desk? In 2016, we opened a new academic center, which is basically it's our library plus some learning spaces, plus some collaborative study rooms, some quiet study spaces, and some spaces for our learning specialists to work with students in a one-on-one environment. Here's a picture of the academic center as you enter, and immediately to the right up there on the right, is the technology center. And if you look carefully, you can see we have a high tabletop with high chairs, tall chairs, that is now manned at different periods during the day by my laptop leaders. I've put them in a role where they can interface with customers, where they can practice their troubleshooting skills as problems come in. I found that it's a standing desk. We tried to model it after Apple's Genius Bars as best we could. And I found that a standing desk works just as well as a sitting desk, and in some cases better for certain repairs. So the long-standing framework of having engaged, enthusiastic laptop leaders, plus this new physical infrastructure I suddenly had in front of me, gave birth to this new idea of, what if I could actually train my students to be officially Apple certified Macintosh technicians? Now, for years, I'd been doing it kind of on the down low. I'd been doing it, but there was nothing codified. I have a couple of students who went through it in 2014 and 2015. They got their certifications, and they went on to have some great success in college and beyond. So I thought, well, what do I have to do? How do I make all of these different pieces of the wheel and the cog fit together to launch this program? And so I started in 2 phases. Phase 1, I knew that if I took these, let's say 15 laptop leaders, and I sat them down in front of Apple's training materials, it would be like drinking from a fire hose. Like, I can't do that to these kids. I only see them like once a block period. I can't have them just start drinking from this crazy fire hose full of information. I said, let me start in a different phase. Let me start with some one-on-one training with them. And then after they're comfortable with the idea of troubleshooting methodology and some basic hardware repair and some terminal commands and so forth, then we'll get to phase 2, which is the actual ACMT training. So every block, every cycle, I had a one-on-one interaction with each of these students. And so here's our crazy schedule. We operate with 75-minute periods on a block schedule. And so it's not a 5-day block, it's like an 8-day block. And so we had to figure out what time periods are going to work. And so actually one of my colleagues created this and figured out which times they were free, that they could come and work the desk and work in a one-on-one environment with me.
Out of curiosity, is this like a volunteer? Are they getting some type of compensation? Are they getting credit?
The question is this volunteer or is there some type of credit or compensation? This is entirely volunteer. Yeah. Now, we've been making an argument that it could be part of a service learning project, but that hasn't been authorized yet. We're working toward that direction, but we're not there yet. This is the Google spreadsheet I use to keep track of attendance. And I also, just for my own purposes, kept track of what we were working on for each cycle. And here are some more examples of some of the things I showed them. How to do SMC and PRAM resets, very common. How to option boot to a boot picker to boot from a different source. How to network boot. How to boot from my utilities drive with things like Disk Warrior and Data Rescue on it. We actually walked them through a whole thing of how do I recover deleted files from a computer using Data Rescue. I showed them the structure of the file system, how there are many different library folders and why there are different levels of library folders. I showed them permission sets and why it's important in Unix that we have different levels of permissions. And then I showed them ACLs and why ACLs are different than permissions. We went through some of the more common issues that we see at the tech desk. Hey, Mr. Barrett, my computer's out of space. What do I do to clean up? What's eating up all my space? Yep, and so we walked them through looking in the downloads folder. I walked them through looking for iTunes backups, for iPhone backups in iTunes. I walked them through finding those HD movies that the students had downloaded from iTunes and never deleted. I showed them how to run software update if they didn't already know. I showed them how to keep Microsoft Office up to date. I showed them command line tools like dmessage. Okay. And there were 8 or 9 cycles altogether. I just show you some examples of what I kept track of here. So after phase 1, which happened over most of a semester, I started talking about phase 2, or started thinking about phase 2. And phase 2 intentionally was meant to be at the end of the school year, after a lot of the projects were done and the final papers were in. And I started querying my user base. I said, how many of you guys would be interested in coming in for 1 week during the summer and working with me in an ACMT class to become ACMT certified? And out of the 12 leaders I have at the upper school, I had 7 of them come in. And so I started to think, well, how can I make this work? So I'm an Apple certified Macintosh technician and have been for many years. I have access to GSX because my school is a self-servicing account. Apple has rules about who can be an SSA. And these are some of the rules. And this is all documented on a public accessible page that Apple has, and the knowledge base article is right there at the bottom. You have to have more than 1,000 devices of macOS and iOS combined. You have to have an ESD safety compliant workspace with the ESD safety tools. And you have to have one or more ACMT or ACIT if you're servicing iPads or iPhones. An ACMT or ACIT certified individual. And you have to have a line of credit. And there's a couple other less important criteria you can find in that document. So we meet all these criteria. We've been SSA for many years. I have access to GSX, which is Apple's parts ordering system and repair ticketing system. And I know that in GSX there are many different levels of access. And there's one level of access including apprentice. An apprentice in GSX can't do very much. They can't order parts. They can't close repairs. They can't even open repairs. But what they can do is access all of that privileged information that Apple has that they give to their technicians and their people in the Apple stores that the average public wouldn't have access to. So, step one, I granted each of my students access to GSX at the apprentice level. Using myaccess.apple.com, which is Apple's authorization portal, I sent out invites to each of their email addresses, which automatically generates an Apple ID, a special kind of Apple ID. That Apple ID then becomes their gateway into GSX and, more importantly, Atlas. Okay. Oh, a quick note. Virtually all of Apple's services nowadays require two-factor authentication, right? So if you're going to do this, make sure that your students have their phones with them, or you're going to come to a screeching halt. Now, I knew ahead of time that this was an issue, but I'm telling you, it could be if you're not thinking ahead enough. They will need their phones with them, and there is a 48-hour to 72-hour activation period. So if you're going to build this kind of a thing, don't expect to get going on day one, because you'll be stuck for 3 days waiting for the activation to take effect. So do all of this kind of work ahead of time. So, having set up the access to GSX, which gives them access to Atlas, step 2 takes place, which is the week-long class. It's about 10 days of material crammed down into 4 days. So remember my concern about drinking from a fire hose? This was drinking from a fire hose. But we got it done. Day 5 was, for me anyway, was ACMT testing. The ACMT 2018 cert requires 2 tests. It's the MAC 18A and the SVC 18A. One is a service exam, and one is a fundamentals exam. In layman's language, that means that one of them is a hardware repair test, and one of them is more customer interaction, using those soft skills that Apple sees or that Apple believes are so important, and which are so important in interacting with customers. Step 3 was actually taking the tests. The steps on this are the students log into GCX, which is Apple's certification portal, and they use the tech ID that was generated when that Apple ID was created and they logged in. So once they've logged into here, there's a tech ID that they need to have. That tech ID will then be used when logging into Pearson VUE to take the tests. And then the very last step is actually taking the tests. Each of these tests cost $20, so it's not a lot of money. I was able to use a school credit card without any issues, so it doesn't matter that the school credit card had somebody else's name on it. There was no issue there. If the student fails one of the tests, then they're not ACMT certified, but they can retake the test within 24 hours later. And what's important to note is that these tests are open book and open notes. Apple does not expect everybody to have this stuff memorized, right? I have never repaired an iMac Pro. I've never even seen in person an iMac Pro. But because I'm ACMT certified, I can go into GSX, I can look up the take apart, and follow the directions for repairing that piece of equipment. So, having done all of this, what did my 2017-2018 school year look like? At the upper school, which is where my office is, we had almost 80 in-house repairs. Things like broken screens, fan replacements, airport card replacement. It provided many hands-on experiences for my students to do repairs. And here's some examples of a few of my students doing repairs. Now, I want you to note, these are staged. These are staged, and I wasn't quite on the ball that day, and so you may notice that I had forgotten to put the battery cover across the batteries. These are staged photos. These were not actual repairs. So, okay. A couple more of my students doing repairs. I think this one here is reseating the airport antenna cables. The other one is reattaching a display, a brand new display. This one on the left here, this is a teacher who brought his computer in with a broken screen. And we were able to replace the screen right there in front of him before he left. So there's no wait. I happened to have a screen because he told me he broke a screen. So I ordered it. It came the next day. And he showed up. We did the repair in 15 minutes, turned him right back around and sent him out the door. And so here he is, the teacher being very fascinated about the student doing the repair. So on June 25th, we did the tests. I had 7 of my laptop leaders take the class and then take the tests. 5 of them passed the tests and are now officially Apple certified Macintosh technicians. The remaining 2 have said that they will be retaking the tests this summer, and so I hope that in the fall, I'll have 7 people at my school, plus myself, who can repair equipment. So before we start this video, I want to talk a little bit about how important it is for you to work with your students to give them these soft skills, these things like how to interact with somebody who is in a pretty bad place. Like, let's say, for instance, that you have a teacher who has spilled liquid on her computer and she has not backed up the computer. And that data is gone. It's just gone. There's no getting it back. The SSD shorted out. It's gone. But the student needs to be able to communicate that in an empathetic manner to the teacher. Or let's say you have a student come in who's embarrassed because a screen popped up on their machine trying to trick them into, installing some virus software because they were visiting porn sites, right? We all know that's just fake, right? We all know that's just garbage, fake messages, but the end user doesn't know that. And so they're embarrassed to be there to begin with because they're being accused of, browsing something inappropriate. But all it is just a nonsense JavaScript message. The students working the help desk need to have those soft skills to be able to talk to the end user and say, it's okay, you didn't do anything wrong, let's clean this up. And so a big part of my phase 1, where I did the one-on-one training with them, was helping them understand what tone to use when they're talking to teachers and students, helping them understand that by the time that user gets to the help desk, they're there because they have a problem, right? People don't like to come to the help desk. They don't want to be there. That's just the nature of what it is. So if you're working in a help desk technician position, you need to understand that they're asking for help. And you need to be empathetic about that and considerate of their time, of their data, of their frame of mind. It might be a teacher who's panicking because she can't find the file that she saved, and she has to use that file in 10 minutes because class is about to start. So sometimes it's teaching them like how to talk people off the ledge. Those soft skills are so important. So I have a video I want to share with you. It's about 10 minutes long. Initially, I had hoped at the end of this presentation to have a live Q&A with some of the students in this program. But I talked to the PSU organizers, and I just was not willing to risk a tech failure because of bandwidth or the wireless, doing a Google Hangouts on this network. So what I did instead is I video recorded a number of them talking about the program and answering some of the questions that I thought you guys might ask. So I want you to watch this video, and then we're going to wrap it up with a relatively long Q&A. I hope you guys will have lots of questions. Okay.
Right here.
Okay.
It doesn't work.
Okay. Well, I can see a problem right off the bat. This is not an iPhone X.
Oh, it isn't?
No, this is a, what is this, Samsung? So maybe, maybe you should go to a different store. I can help you find another store that will help you with your problem, though. Okay. Well, that's good.
So for help desk, I think one of the pretty cool parts about it is that you're learning a lot as it's not just the user. Like someone came in with Excel, I've never used Excel in my entire life, and I was able to fix their problem just through Google searches and really simple stuff. And then you kind of get that feedback where they come back later and they're like, wow, this actually worked, and I looked it up and I asked a professional, and they were like, this is perfectly the way that I would do it. And just being able to go through the steps of just looking up how to solve a problem instead of just knowing exactly what to do is pretty interesting.
So real hands-on
Yeah,
customer interactions.
basically, yeah.
I mean, also, I think it helps you develop your skills with people, just working with other people, other than helping you develop your own skill with the application, perhaps, that you might not have been using. It also helps you develop closer relationships with the people that you're helping, which is nice.
Yeah, getting to know faculty through that way is kind of pretty cool.
The more useful skill is the connection of the technical detail into the sort of easily understandable, plain, simple language, which is a very important skill.
Tell me about your overall impression of the Tech Leader program, which you've been a member of for
ages. I
5
joined
years,
in
6 years?
6th grade, I think.
So quite a while. 6 years
a
or
while,
7 years.
6 or 7 years, yeah. I don't know. It's always, I feel it's sort of like a formal representation of something that will happen regardless, which is teachers will have problems with the technology they need to run their class, and students will end up helping.
Right.
So the Tech Leader thing is sort of a more formal version of that. It's saying, okay, we acknowledge this. We're going to train students to be really good at helping teachers fix things that they need to do for class. And it works fantastically.
Right.
So there's, I don't know. I know it's a bias sample because in every one of my classes, the Tech Leader
You're the
is
tech
present
leader,
because it's me. But, there'll probably be 1 or 2 in the class that's oh, this isn't working. They'll just pipe up and say, try such and such, or restart this thing.
Restart the Apple TV.
Exactly. Restart this, reconnect to Wi-Fi, don't use AirPlay.
Right.
I don't know, I'd say that in your school there are already students doing this. There are already students in this role. You just need to find them and make it an official thing. Because it's already happening. Like, that's just how it works in a classroom. You know, not everyone knows how to use everything, and if you're a one-to-one school or a school with technology, you know, for learning, there will be people going around fixing things, helping people out. Like, they'll exist. You just need to find them and, you know, formalize that program.
And now you've graduated MKA in 2014, and you're 4 years out. And I wanted to ask you, what has been the benefit of this? Tell me about some of the benefits you've gotten from becoming ACMT and going through the course. How has that helped you in college? How has it helped you in your post-college life?
I sort of said it before, but it literally helps me in everything. It's a different way of thinking. Every course that I take, they talk about, okay, you need to really isolate the problem, and that's a lot of skills that students don't come into college with. They don't understand how to isolate a problem or how to think about what are the steps to isolate the problem. And working at the help desk and working through the course and working through just even day-to-day when I was troubleshooting with teachers and students and things like that, that is at the core of what you're doing every single time. They're telling you one thing, but they're experiencing the side effect of the issue. Let's backwards and rebuild this and understand what the big problem is. And that's been crucial. I mean, you do that in statistics. You do it in everything that you do at school. And especially, like, I have a law minor. It's all about problem solving. It's all about a different way of thinking. It's all about approaching a problem differently. And that's what I learned how to do really early on. And people always say, like, MKA prepares you for life. And yes, I absolutely agree that it does. But this is really, like, what prepared me the most. Yes, all the courses and all the independence and learning and all the different things that we did, but this as the core to so much of what I did in high school and even in middle school when we were beginning to product test and figure out what we were doing, that was what made the difference.
No, I know we had a lot of fun in class doing role-playing.
Yeah, that was great.
Customer and technician role-playing. Do you see that being useful at the tech desk next year?
Yeah, I mean, you know, what we did was sort of a cartoonish exaggeration, but there are people, I mean, and not even just at the tech desk, in doing stuff in classrooms, right? I mean, I told you that at one point I had a teacher who blamed me for some reason for the fact that the printer wasn't working and people couldn't print out assignments. That was, you know, she got angry, but, you know, I feel like knowing how to deal with that is really important. Yeah, I mean, especially in a school environment, we were talking about how teachers don't like to be the students.
Right.
It's a little weird for them.
Yeah.
And there's the whole, like, you know, there are people here who went to Ivy League schools with PhDs, and they just, you know, magnifying the words in a Word document is just, it frustrates them, right? Because, you know, it's just not something that they're used to. Yeah. And, you know, they're in front of a class of students, so they want to be able to be proficient and professional in what they do.
I feel better prepared, and I'm sort of looking forward to it. It seems like a great opportunity, not only to, you know, kind of do something new, but also, you know, get experience in the field of, like, you know, helping people out and customer service and all that. So I think it definitely helps, and this course did prepare us for stuff like that, especially like how to handle customers and things like that. I feel like was like a really big part of it. So I do feel like I am prepared.
And if you are able to do an ACMT course, I would definitely say, even if you're not thinking of like you're actually going to do it or become a Mac genius, I think that is something that is worth having, because you can use the skills that you learn in everyday life and in other ways. Like, there was a graduate who came in yesterday lecturing us about how she uses her this course, the skills that she learned in this course for her job in college, and that really helps her. Like, the interpersonal skills that you learn are very great and can definitely be adapted to everyday life, and
even in your everyday interactions with people and your parents and your teachers. So.
Yeah, I think that's also something, and also just having this just in case you want to you drop it but you want to like renew it or something, even if you like, or you could use it to potentially get a job at an Apple store, because that's definitely a way to definitely boost your repertoire, and that would make way for more high-paying jobs that have to do with technology, especially since that in this decade technology has really sprung up.
So most of the people in the audience for this presentation will be people who work at schools. I imagine my audience will be 80 to 90% K-12 people.
Right.
Do you have anything to say to them about technology in K-12 or about our tech program?
So like I was saying, I think it's really important to have, students act in their own way. They need to have a little bit of free range to find out what works for them. Computers and, technology in general, we've created very powerful tools, and people have created very powerful tools, and there's so many of them, and there's a lot of differences, and not everything's gonna work for everybody. So, people will get really frustrated if they don't know how to use something or it doesn't work for them. So I think that, allowing people and supporting people to go and find what works for them is important.
So I know that was long, it was 10 minutes, but I really felt it important for you guys to hear the authentic voices of the students involved in this. And I think that they said some really important things. Quite a few of them touched on that very idea of soft skills and how important they are. And I'm really pleased that a lot of them recognize that, even at their young ages. So let's do some Q&A. I think I figure out how to make this work here. Yeah,
I do have
perfect.
a question, but it looks like your school is quite affluent.
Yeah.
I looked up the tuition and it's
Significant.
Yeah.
So we do work in an affluent independent school. Our tuition is significant. That definitely allows us a little bit more flexibility than, say, a public school, some of the public schools. It doesn't mean that you couldn't implement portions of this program at your school. That's up to you to determine your own culture and your own resources. So I mentioned earlier that in our one-to-one program that all of our users are admins. And so I think what you're asking here, how do you deal with admin passwords? There is a hidden administrator account on every laptop that us technicians have access to. The laptop leaders do not know that password, okay? And we do not share it with them. Okay? And that's only so that if we have to reset a password for somebody, I can do it, or my colleague at the middle school can do it, or one of the 4 people in our tech department.
so any repairs that require admin passwords they don't do?
Well, a repair is generally a hardware repair. So the question was any repairs that require a hardware a password they don't do. So they generally only do hardware repairs. And when they're doing data recovery, I'm there right there next to them doing it. Okay. And we do not enable file vault, and so we don't need to work around that problem. Okay. You mentioned about 80 repairs in 1 year. Yes, many of them were broken displays. So when we designed our program, we knew that we would have broken screens, and we knew we'd have liquid spills, and we knew we'd have laptops that got stolen from airports, and we knew we'd have laptops dropped off of boats into lakes, and all kinds of other examples you can't even imagine. We also knew that Apple's repairs are kind of expensive, right? A 15-inch MacBook Pro, or I'm sorry, a 13-inch 2015 MacBook Pro screen, retail price on that is like $500. Exchange price is $350. So, and a logic board is like $780 or $750. That's pretty expensive, and that's a lot of money to ask a parent who's already paying a lot of money in tuition to pony out. So we had to come up with a number that was high enough to defray some of the costs of the repair, but not so high that parents would be like, what? Why am I paying $800 for a 2.5-year-old computer? And the number we settled on many years ago was $250. And we just simply call that a deductible. And so when we have a broken screen or a liquid spill or a lost or stolen computer, That deductible is what's paid by the parents, and then the school picks up the remainder. Any more questions on that?
So now that there's AppleCare Plus,
So we have AppleCare on every device. And so AppleCare, we do not have AppleCare Plus. We have AppleCare. Because I know AppleCare Plus does one-time screen replacements. We don't have that. Okay. The catch box is back there. I didn't know where it was.
So I work with Damien. The AppleCare that we have is actually specifically for our type of school and our type of deployment. So it is a special program that if you do this, if you're certified as we are, and you have that, they will issue you a certain type of AppleCare that allows you to do those repairs. And that $250 deductible, we actually had Safeware years ago, where we were paying an annual cost and shipping a lot of these things out. What we found is that what we were paying the insurance company was more than we were actually doing, and that $250 deductible is one of the things that was set at that point. It's important to know it's a $250 per incident charge. So it's not just if your kid is really clumsy and breaks the machine 3 times, it's $750. So it's a $250 per incident charge.
And in my experience, that hasn't been a huge stumbling block. When explained in that way to parents, most of them are like, oh, okay, makes sense. Usually it's like, oh, thank you, that I don't have to pay this entire cost of the repair. We do, in the case of a stolen computer, which is not really the fault of anybody except the thief, we do ask that a police report be filed. And then once we have that police report, the school will pick up the costs of the replacement machine. Because that's not a student's fault that the laptop was stolen out of their car or burgled from their house.
All right. I just wanted to start with a comment. These students are wonderful. I work with students in the help desk. I used to be part of a help desk as a student in my college, and these are amazing, bright kids. So I just wanted to say that straight away. How have you been able to maintain their interest in this program? I find that our help desk students get really excited at the beginning of the year. Oh, I learned this new technology, all these new skills, but through the quarter, they just kind of lose interest and lose productivity. So any advice?
You saw that I had a number of cycles where I was working on with them one-on-one, and there were lots and lots of things listed there. So I made a real effort to really kind of stretch and find things that they might not learn anywhere else. And I really tried to almost create them in my mold. Like, what are the special skills that I have? And how can I teach those special skills to students under me? Including things like, how do I repair a damaged file system using Disk Warrior? How do I properly erase a hard drive or format a hard drive to install a particular operating system? And I imagine that as Apple's hardware continues to evolve and we have to deal with T1 and T2 chips, we'll be teaching them those techniques and tools as well. So how do we maintain the interest? Just make sure that there's lots and lots of information. Like, look, the technology world is huge, right? And it's ever changing, right? The landscape that we have right now is vastly different from even just 5 years ago. And so if you imagine that a high school student's career is 4 years, it's very conceivable that their freshman year, what they're learning, might be very different from what they're learning in their senior year. And so if you're, as a technician, as a trainer, if you stay on top of that, you can keep their interest as their skills evolve to match the evolving hardware and software. Okay. How many hours are your volunteers allowed to work per week? So we have this unusual block scheduling where every period is 75 minutes. And typically I have the students once per cycle. And so it's 75 minutes a cycle, which is every 8 days. And then I have one other technician at the middle school who you saw him in the video. He helps with hardware training and hardware repairs at the middle school. But otherwise, it's almost entirely me doing the training. Okay. Let's see what's next here. Yes. Do you only allow them to work on school equipment? Yes. They are not allowed to work on school equipment that's not owned by our school. And that is solely because the repairs they're doing are absolutely 100% under my supervision and my responsibility. They are very much apprentice technicians. So no, that 16-year-old kid who got the ACMT, he cannot go out and hang a shingle and put up a sign saying, Aaron's repair service, and start repairing the equipment, because he's not an AASB, he's not an Apple authorized service provider, he's not a self-servicing account. The only repairs he can do are the ones under my supervision on our equipment under our Apple Care and service agreement. Does that make sense? Okay. Same question. We're a self-servicing account. Okay. It is not yet part of any class credit or any part of but we're working on that. The head of our education technology department and I have been talking about trying to get the administration to recognize the work these kids are doing and giving them a different type of credit towards some of their service learning requirements. In progress. Like anything, like anywhere else, it takes time. Okay. The name of the class is very simply just Apple Certified Macintosh Technician Training, ACMT class. Okay. Are you running AST2 hardware diagnostics? Yes, we are. Yep. I have an AST server running on a Mac Mini in the desk right behind me. And the students boot into it over the network and run diagnostic tests on the hardware.
So I'm the one who asked that question. Are the students, when they're running those diagnostics, are only the students who are ACMT certified running them, or are they kind of like shadowing you with your account running the diagnostics?
It has my name attached to it, so are they pushing the buttons? Yes. Who's responsible? Me.
Okay. Okay.
So, and almost every single time I've been right there next to them when they're doing it.
Okay, yeah, because that's a big hurdle that we started to see was like with AST1, you know, we would just let them, you know, hold down option N and run the diagnostics themselves. But once AST2 came out, you know, us in hardware repair are running that, and the students really don't get a chance to run that anymore. So, in every case
I can think of right now, I've been right there next to them while we run it.
Okay.
So, but it's more important to me that they have the experience of doing it.
Absolutely.
And that's actually been really valuable, and they love to see it. Like, whoa, look at these cool diagnostics I've never even seen before. Yeah. Whether it be MRI or a keyboard mapping tool, or they actually really liked for some reason they liked the trackpad diagnostic tool for the 2015 Retinas. They really liked the heavy weights for some reason.
You could send them my way. I'll let them run them.
I thought for sure like the most boring part, and all of them were like, wow, this is cool, and they're putting the weights on the trackpad, and so. Okay, some schools are reluctant to invest money in out-of-the-box ideas like yours. Apart from my time, what are the various costs? Honestly, almost nothing. We already have a SSA with Apple. I'm already certified. The cost of the tests are negligible. It's really a time issue, which is one of the reasons why I kind of liked this program. I could go ahead and spearhead it and not have to go to my boss and say, hey, I need $5,000, or hey, I need $40,000. I could say, can I do this? He said, yes. And I said, great, let's go.
With regard to the cost involved with this, as Damien mentioned, when we launched the program 10 years ago, we really were thinking about not only this aspect of how we were going to launch the program, but also our physical spaces. So we took some of our labs. Damien had a great picture of the tech center up there. We developed tech centers. You walk into our spaces. So if there was any cost, there wasn't a cost associated directly with this program, but with the entire philosophical move that we made, it was not only from a teaching and learning perspective, but it was from a physical space perspective. We never wanted anyone to come into the tech center and be faced with piles of equipment and any of those things. So you walk into the tech center, there are couches, there are coffee tables, there are places to sit down, there are comfortable chairs. And to Damien's point, his desk is just on the opposite side of that help desk area. So we're never out of reach. So as the director of the school, in terms of, Damien's responsible for what they're doing, I'm responsible for what everyone's doing. There is no real worry at that point, because the spaces were designed specifically with these things in mind. And Damien's role, and he's done an incredible job with this, as you've all seen, is really to help foster this within the entire idea of what we want this program to be.
There's a question over there, Bill.
So I know the ACMT test itself is pretty negligible. But who does the actual ACMT training? Because I know our department did it, and it's like a couple grand per person to bring in outside training. So you do the training yourself to prep for the exam?
So I've been ACMT for almost 20 years. So periodically I have to go and renew, but that's not hard. I've been doing this for a very long time. So if you're looking to, it's also true you can't do this program and you can't become SSA until you have an ACMT person. So I would encourage you to look at Apple's training courses, which are expensive, but they'll...
Well, our department, everyone in our department, as far as the employees are ACMT. We got it, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So would that enable us, in Apple's eyes, to do the training for
unofficially?
For students?
Okay. Unofficially, yeah, because it's also true that many years ago I was also an Apple certified trainer. That certification has expired, but I have the experience doing it, and I'm doing this in an unofficial capacity. But the tests are the tests, and the certification is the certification. And these modules in Atlas are no different than the ones that Apple's Mac geniuses take when they go to work at the store. They're exactly the same. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you share all of the cycles with me? Yes, if you email me privately. I'll email them out to you. My email is at the end. I'll get it to you. What do teachers pay for accidents? Unless it's particularly egregious, nothing. Yet. Yet. Okay. And that actually doesn't happen very often. We've had, in 10 years, maybe a dozen. So it's not a crazy number. Far less than students, because it's a much smaller pool of people. And the teachers are a little bit more responsible than some of the students. So it's just about 200 to 220 faculty, staff, but yeah. And then remember, equity and parity across the board. Everyone has exactly the same machine.
What's your recycle?
We cycle every 3 years. Yeah. Now, let's talk about that for a second. The equipment that we have gets cycled every 3 years. We make a concerted effort to keep this equipment in as mint condition as possible, because at the end of the 3 years, we sell it. And we get anywhere from 30 to 40% of the value back that then gets rolled into the next equipment purchase.
You sell it to a company, or do you let the families buy it?
So that's a great question. Do we sell it to a company, or do we let the families buy it? We do not let the families buy it, even though we get asked every year, without question, all the time, and every year the answer is no. And we tell them it's because we have to sell the equipment to get the money back. We also tell them that if I feel it's a conversation I can have with this person, I tell them this. In my experience, when we sell a piece of equipment to somebody, there's this unwritten rule about supporting this equipment. And so then 2 years go by, and then, hey, my iMac or my laptop is broken. Can you repair it? And I'm like, you mean the one I sold you 3 years ago? So we just didn't want to have to deal with that. We have a limited number of people on our staff. I'm not providing out-of-warranty repairs for 5- and 6-year-old used equipment. And I'm not providing technical support either. Oh, I can't get the latest version of Office to run on this really old machine you sold me. So we made that decision just to say no. Don't be afraid to say no. Okay, a couple more questions. How did the administration initially respond to this idea? Were there any concerns or pushback? Not really. My boss is in the room. He's spoken up a few times. I brought this to him a while back, and he said, yeah, that sounds really awesome. It's kind of what we've been doing all along, kind of unofficially. Let's codify it, and let's kind of programmatically build it. And every year that I do it, it gets better and better and better and better. So, how do you handle certain cases when the student broke the part? We've talked about that. Depends on what it is. If it's a broken screen, it's $250. If it's a broken keycap got popped off, I have key replacements. I just replace it. And parts fail too. Fans fail. Airport cards go wonky. Yes. Yes. I think we have 5 PCs. I don't manage them, so we are Mac only, and we've been Mac only for many years, 15 years or longer. And are your students recertifying every year when new hardware is released? They will. The only students I've had who have been certified so far before this cycle was the girl you saw who graduated in 2014, who's gone for 4 years. And I had one more in 2015 who's also gone. They can, on their own, they can go and recertify at Pearson. They go to Pearson View and they can log in with their Tech ID and log in with their Pearson ID, which has their Tech ID attached to it, and they can take the test and recertify. So it's up to them, really. Now, we're right at the edge of a new cycle for us, and we do not yet know what the next device will be. We don't know because there are some challenges coming with soldered SSDs, with T security chips. I have not yet worked out what my repair routines will be because I don't know what the next device will be yet.
It came out today.
Maybe. We don't know if we're going with that device yet because we have to look at cost, we have to look at repairability, applicability to our environment. Those are all things challenges we're going to be overcoming or dealing with in the fall, September, October timeframe. With the idea that we buy test equipment in October-ish, test for 6 months, buy the fleet in April, roll out in June. Do you buy the equipment or do we lease it? We purchase it. Because we end up turning it on and reselling it at the end to get that money back to roll into the next cycle. Ninth grade. Yep, youngest ACMT is 9th grade. And he's one of the students you saw in the video. Okay. All right, any other questions? Mike?
Those students that are part of that program actually start in the middle school. The youngest certified Apple Tech is 9th grade. But the Ed Tech leaders, we start in 5th grade. So it's a full middle school through high school program. So a lot of those kids, one of the kids that Damien was interviewing was talking about being in the program for 7 or 8 years. It's because he started in the middle school at a very, very early age.
The middle school students are not certified. We don't have a program in place to certify them. I'm not sure we ever will. Maybe we'll start to pull like 8th graders up. We're not sure yet. Right now it's focused at the high school level. The schedule at our middle school doesn't really allow for it right now, which is the biggest hurdle, but we'll see as the program develops. All right. Any more questions?
So just to follow up about your middle school program, do they learn the same topics? Do you meet with them the same way you meet with the high school students? We're sort of trying to start this, but we're only a K-8 school.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, the schedule at the middle school does not yet allow for this type of one-on-one training. It may. I know our schedule is actually changing next year at the middle school. I haven't looked at it yet. to see whether it's going to fit or not. If it does, if it looks like there are periods at the middle school in the schedule where it works, we may roll this down and start working with some of the older middle school kids. We don't know yet. Bill has the comment.
The middle school program, the kids, they meet with our middle school ed tech coordinator and to some degree the middle school version of Damien. And they're doing things, one of the things Damien had up there and he talked about, if you go to driversmanual.mka.org, that's the students put together the resources that develop that manual that people have to pass to take to get their administrative certification. So those kids will work on things like that, but they won't touch the equipment in the way in which Damien's been describing.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All right. Remember, tiny hats are awesome. They really. Thank you for coming. I hope this was useful, educational, and I hope that you take something away from it to use at your own school. Thanks.